As we have talked about biotechnology this week, we have mentioned a little bit about the impacts of biotechnology. While they do a lot of good as far as being able to treat disorders, make proteins, make things more nutritious, help farmers grow better crops by making them resistant to the herbicides or to pests. There are some downfalls to using biotechnology, and we've touched on that just a bit. Ethics. Ethics is a big thing. Should we go in and mess with somebody's genetic material? Some people say yes, some people say no. What is the impact of that? What is the impact of putting a genetically modified organism into an ecosystem? How is it going to affect the other organisms that belong in that ecosystem? So this section 15.4 is going to look a little bit about the ethics and impact in biotechnology. Section 15.4, Ethics and Impacts of Biotechnology. Profits and privacy. Who owns your genes? Can anyone else use the information in your genes? When biotechnology and drug companies develop GM plants and animals, they protect their discoveries and innovations with patents. A patent is a legal tool that gives the individual or company an exclusive right to profits from the innovations for a number of years. Okay, so should they be able to patent our genes? Patenting life. When you think about patents, you might think about an inventor protecting a new machine. However, molecules and DNA sequences can be patented too. 1/5 of the known genes in the human genome have been patented. Even laboratory techniques like PCR have been patented. The ability to patent is meant to encourage new discovery. After all, patent holders have a good chance of making money sometimes. Sometimes patent holders demand high fees that block their scientists from doing their research. Now think about the information held in your own genome. You have exclusive rights to your DNA? Should you, like patent holders, be able to keep your genetic information confidential? When it comes to your own DNA, how much privacy are you entitled to? Our key question is, what privacy issue does biotechnology raise? Do you have exclusive rights to your DNA? Should you, like patent holders, be able to keep your genetic information confidential? Genetic ownership. People who serve in the U.S. Armed Forces give a DNA sample when they begin serving. Those DNA samples are used, if needed, to identify the remains of people who die in the line of duty. But what if the government wants to use a person's DNA sample for other tests? What if health insurance companies want to refuse coverage to people who have a gene that might make them more likely to get an illness? The U.S. Congress debated these issues. The Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act was signed into law in 2008. This act protects Americans against discrimination based on their genetic information. Okay, this is a soldier marching at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. Okay. Now if you have something that's got cells from that person that you lost in a war, they can now do DNA testing to help identify those remains. So the Tomb of the Unknown in Arlington National Cemetery holds the remains of unknown American soldiers. DNA testing now helps to identify the remains of the U.S. military personnel who died in the line of duty, so there should be no more unknown soldiers. GM crops are controversial. People argue about the safety of using them. Are the foods from GM crops the same as those prepared from traditionally bred crops? Okay, pros of GM foods. GM means genetically modified. The companies making seeds for GM crops will say that GM plants are better and safer than other crops. Farmers choose them because they have higher yields. They use less land and energy to help lower costs. They are insect resistant, so they need fewer chemicals, and help to reduce pollution. Careful studies have not supported concerns over their safety. These studies seem to show that GM foods are safe to eat. Cons of GM foods. Critics point out that no studies have tested whether the long-term use of these foods might cause danger. Some worry that the insect resistance in GM plants may also hurt helpful insects. Herbicide-resistant plants allow farmers to use more weed killer, increasing pollutants. Company patents on costly GM seeds may put small or poor farmers out of business. In the United States, federal regulations treat GM foods and non-GM foods the same, so GM foods do not have to face extra safety tests before entering the U.S. market. No traditional labeling is required to identify a product as genetically modified, unless its ingredients are very different from the non-GM counterparts. Some states, however, have introduced state legislation to require the labeling of GM foods. This would give consumers a choice. And here the key question is, are GM foods safe? This careful study of such foods have provided no scientific support for concerns about their safety. It does seem that foods made from GM plants are safe to eat. Even if GM foods itself presents no hazards, there are still many serious concerns about the unintended consequences that a shift to GM farming and ranching might have on agriculture. So, ethics of the new biology. You've seen how easy it is to move genes from one organism to another. For example, the GFP gene can be taken from a jellyfish and spliced into the genes coding important cellular proteins. This ability has led to scientific new discoveries about how cells function. The use of GFP technology was used to make fluorescent zebrafish. Experiments moving the GFP gene have taught scientists much about cells and proteins, but just because we have the technology to change an organism's characteristics, should we? Okay, those of you who've had me for very long have heard me say more than once, just because you can doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And that, again, may be the case with some of the genetic engineering processes. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean that you should. It would be great if genetic engineering led to cures for genetic diseases. However, should biologists try to make people taller or change their sex or looks? What will happen to the human species when we can design our bodies or those of our children? What will happen if biologists want to clone human beings? In a democratic nation, everyone is responsible for making sure that the tools the science has given us are used wisely. This means that you need to be ready to help decide what should and should not be done with the human genome. Should genetic modifications of humans and other organisms be closely regulated? The issue, just because you have technology to modify an organism's characteristics, are we justified in doing so? Do we have the rights? Do we have the authority to go in and make some of these changes? So gaining more understanding. These fluorescent zebrafish were originally bred to help scientists find environmental pollutants. Today, the techniques used to produce such fish are widely used in research. Fluorescent labels are helping researchers to understand cancer and other diseases, and they do use fluorescence a lot in tracking where medications travel to in the body, or in tracking, they can highlight tumor cells and track whether the medication is able to go to those tumor cells. So it does have some good uses. But should we just go around and, you can buy fluorescent fish at places, pet stores now. Should you just make them fluorescent so you can sell them that way? And those can be ethical questions as well. Critical thinking, applying concepts. How could biotechnology affect your privacy? Okay, insurance companies may start requiring that they get to look at your genes before they give you an insurance policy. And if you have something that's going to maybe give you a disorder later down the road, then they may refuse your insurance, or they may charge you an exorbitant amount of money for your insurance because they know that they're going to be spending a lot of money on you because you're going to be hospitalized or something. So, how's it going to affect your privacy? Think about that one. Explain what are genetically modified foods. Well, genetically modified foods are things like tomatoes that are grown from plants that have been engineered. They have taken genes from fish that live in cold waters and implanted it into tomato plants so that they can grow tomatoes in the wintertime or in colder climates. So that would be a GMO food, would be the tomatoes grown from those plants. The BT corn that we read about earlier, the BT corn that makes the pesticide, that would be a genetically modified food. And there are lots of other examples. The golden rice that has the extra vitamin A in it. Lots of different things there. Okay. Form an opinion. Should a vegetarian be concerned about eating a GM plant that contains DNA from a pig gene? That could be a concern. Well, not even necessarily just because you're a vegetarian, but also like Orthodox Jews and some other religious groups don't eat pigs or pork. But it may even be something more than a choice. It may be life-threatening. Maybe if you're allergic to pork and you're eating a vegetable that has a pig gene in it, are you going to react to that or not? So those are some other questions there. Support your answer in detail, so think about that. You can put that there. Explain what are the main concerns about genetic engineering discussed in this chapter. So there's some concerns there. Then it says right to learn. Answer the questions in the mystery clue below. The mystery clue says, what privacy considerations, if any, should investigators have taken into account when obtaining DNA evidence? It was back on page 367. What privacy considerations, if any, should investigators have taken into account in obtaining the DNA evidence? I don't know if we have that page. I don't know what pages we have. No, but I don't believe we have that page. Okay, so those are those questions. Think about those. Make your Google Doc and answer those and attach and submit.